Stop me if you've heard this one before. A king in shining plate armor sits on the throne, ruling a continent-sized empire with the absolute authority of a modern dictator, while every single peasant from the snowy north to the desert south speaks the exact same dialect of common and prays to the exact same God without a single argument. If that sounds like your world, congratulations. You've built a cardboard theme park, not a culture. World building is more than just drawing cool maps or picking out aesthetic outfits. Real cultures are messy, they're contradictory, and they are shaped by the brutal reality of the ground they stand on. But instead of doing the work, many creators just lean on the same tired, lazy tropes that have been hollowed out for decades. Today, we're fixing that. I'm giving you 5 rants plus a bonus on the absolute worst mistakes people make in cultural world building, and more importantly, how you can stop being lazy and actually make your setting feel alive. Welcome to another episode of Just in Time World Building with your host, Marie Mullaney. And without further delay, we're going to kick this one off with mistake number 1. Our first faux pas is the medieval vibe trap. And you know exactly what it is. I know you do. It's when you've got the plate armor, you've got the mud, and you've got the dramatic sword fights of medieval Europe. But you don't feel like dealing with feudal politics, so you turn around and give your king the absolute undisputed authority of Louis XIV. That's not how this works. Say it with me now. Strong, centralized European-style kingdoms are not medieval. Deep down, I think you knew that. But when you were writing, you were too damn lazy to deal with the presence of guns or the printing press in a Renaissance setting, and you didn't feel like dealing with feudalism either. So instead, you just pretend your knights and swords are Renaissance politics ready. They are not. In the real world, feudalism isn't a clean corporate hierarchy. It isn't the CEO giving orders to his employees. It's a messy, exhausting, and often localized web of personal oaths. If your king wants an army, he doesn't just send an email to the barracks. He has to go, his very own self, and either hold them to their oaths through strength of arms, or strength of personality, or strength of his relationship with his liegemen. And if those vassals don't like him, or if they think the duke next door is offering a better deal, they either just stay home or join the other side. So here's the fix. If you want a centralized god king who controls everything from a distant capital, you have to advance your tech or your bureaucracy. You need a mechanical reason why a local lord can't just flip the king the bird and hide in his castle for 3 years. Either you give the king a standing army that doesn't rely on nobility, which is a modern innovation, or lords have some actual leverage that should play into your story. Because a king with no opposition isn't medieval. It's a fairy tale. For more on feudalism, check out my video on that pyramid scheme governmental structure. And let's move right along. Point number 2 is a massive pet peeve of mine. Why is it that every time a fantasy culture decides to hop in a boat and raid their neighbors, they suddenly turn into Vikings? Listen, Cupcake. The Norsemen did not have a patent on hitting people from the water. Look at the Polynesians. These people were some of the greatest navigators the world has ever seen. They built ships capable of sailing across vast open oceans, and they used them to raid the absolute hell out of each other. They didn't need fur capes or snowy fjords to be terrifying. They had sophisticated maritime technology, complex societal structures, and a warrior culture that would make your average shield maiden look like a hobbyist. Raiding is a universal response to, we have boats, they have stuff, and our land is rocky. Polynesians, sea peoples, Woku pirates. History is full of maritime terrors who didn't wear horned helmets, which weren't even real anyway. The fix here is simple. Stop copy-pasting Scandinavia. Think about the geography your people actually live in. If they live in a tropical archipelago, their ships shouldn't look like longships. Their weapons shouldn't be iron axes. Their motivations for raiding shouldn't be glory in Valhalla. Maybe they're raiding for resources their volcanic island lacks. Maybe it's a seasonal ritual. Whatever it is, give them their own identity. Give me an island culture or two that raids without sounding like they just stepped out of a History Channel documentary. The ocean is big enough for more than one type of pirate. Start using it. And for more on pirates, check out my video on that very topic, and let me get off the soapbox and on to the next. On this point, we're going to talk about geography, because far too many of you are ignoring it. You're putting European-style politics in a landscape that looks like China, or you're trying to run a massive unified empire on a continent that looks like Europe. It makes no sense. Look at a map of the world. Europe is a tiny landmass, yet it has over 40 different countries crammed into it. Why? Because Europe's landscape, all those jagged coastlines, mountain ranges, and deep forests, encourages decentralization. Empires in Europe don't, generally speaking, last. They splinter, they fragment, they turn into 43 different versions of "we hate the guy over the hill." There's a reason I describe Europe as the PvP server of the world. We have had a great powers war in Europe every damn century, without fail, for a literal millennia. Whatever you think you know about war, you know nothing, Jon Snow. Now, look at the Americas, or the Great Plains of Asia. Do you see those vast open stretches of land? That's prime empire real estate. That's where you park your massive centralized states, because there are fewer geographical barriers to stop a central army from marching. There is a reason why the biggest European empires had to leave their own continent and conquer other people's lands to get their breathing room. They went out of pocket because their own geography wouldn't let them grow like that. The only people who truly got a European empire right were the Romans, and let's be honest, luck was on their side. They had the perfect Mediterranean highway for logistics and a never-say-die culture that bordered on insanity. Unless your culture has that specific blend of luck and lunacy, or a magic system that can magically teleport supplies over a mountain range, your geography is going to dictate your politics. The fix is simple. If your continent is broken and jagged, expect splintering cultures and constant border wars. If you want a 1,000-year empire, put it on the plains. Stop trying to fight the map. The map always wins. P.S. Yeah, I know. There were a few other empires here and there in Europe, but seriously, my point stands. Look at the countries per square kilometer of real estate, and you see the problem with having an empire in Europe. And for more my thoughts on how to create a fantasy map, check out my video on that topic. And now, let's step a little sideways for number 4. Issue number 4 is the flat religion or the mono-religion. And by that I mean the one-size-fits-all faith. No sects, no reformations, no rebel schools of thought. Man, this annoys me. It is absolutely ridiculous. Think about what a religion actually is. It's somewhere between a core identity, a philosophy, and a moral framework. Do you honestly believe that every single person in a culture just 100% agrees with the state religion all the time? You think there are no splits, no side quests, no heretical monasteries tucked away in the mountains? Are you for real right now? Look at any major religion in our own history. They are messy. They are fractured. People have spent centuries killing each other over the interpretation of a single comma in a holy book. They split over who should lead, how to pray, whether or not priests should be allowed to wear fancy hats. When you write a religion that is perfectly unified across an entire culture, you aren't writing a believable culture. You're writing a monolith. It feels fake because it is fake. And the fix is easy. Give your religion some friction. Give me a reformation that happened 200 years ago and left a lingering grudge. Give me a rebel sect that thinks the mainstream church is corrupt. Even if it's just a small disagreement over ritual, it makes the world feel lived in. Heck, I'd settle for a secret cult or two. A religion without a schism isn't a faith. It's a placeholder. Stop using placeholders and start giving your characters something real to argue about. And for more on politics and religion, check out my video on that topic. And let's move on to the final point before we reach the bonus rant. All right, point number 5, the lack of diverse cultural philosophies and moral frameworks. I'm going to say this loud for the people in the back. A culture is more than just a group of people wearing fancy hats. Culture isn't an aesthetic choice or a costume. It's a group of people agreeing on a fundamental level. This is who we are, and this is what we deem to be important. And the way a culture actually lives and breathes, the way it changes over time, is through its philosophies, its writers, and its thinkers. If you look at European history, you can literally chart the changes in our moral frameworks by reading our philosophy, our fiction, and our politicians' speeches. You can see the shifts in how we view the individual, the state, and the divine. But in most world building, everyone just shares the same bland, modern, common sense. Now, I'm not saying you have to sit down and write actual dense works of philosophy. Nobody has the time for that, and frankly, nobody wants to read it. But you need to chart how your culture's values have shifted over time. The fix is pretty simple. Make up some names. Give me the names of the philosophers and the titles of the books that have made those changes over time real. When a character says, as the great sage Valerius wrote in the Treatise on Honor, that does more for your world building than 10 pages of describing their architecture, because it shows that your culture has an intellectual history. It shows that they've argued about what it means to be a good and righteous person. If you don't have these internal debates in your culture, your characters aren't really people. They're just props in fancy clothes. And for help in creating such a rich culture, let me briefly plug World Building Blueprints, which you can buy in PDF or EPUB on my website right now. It has a cultural world building model and a way to use that model to create snapshots in time for your cultures so that you can track their changes and map the events and philosophical schools that created those changes. Links to all that down below. And finally, the bonus round while the epic members of this channel scroll past in the credits. Languages with no dialects and no accents aren't real. Have you actually looked at a map of England? It's like this big, right? And yet, if you hear a Cornishman, a Welshman, and a Scotsman all try to communicate with someone from London, they're almost not intelligible to each other. And that is one tiny, tiny country where half the time people's accents are so thick they can barely understand each other. And yet, in your fantasy world, you've got a continent the size of Eurasia where everyone speaks common with the exact same syntax and the exact same vocabulary, from the frozen tundra to the burning sands. Are you kidding me? Language is alive. It's messy. It drifts. If two groups of people are separated by a mountain range for 500 years, they're not going to sound the same. They're going to have different slang, different idioms, and different ways of chewing on their vowels. You don't need to be a linguist to fix this. You don't have to be Tolkien and invent 5 languages. Just let your languages have some dialects. Give the mountain folk a clipped, efficient way of speaking. Give the port city a vocabulary filled with loan words from every culture they trade with. Let a character's accent and idioms tell us exactly where they're from before they even finish their first sentence. When everyone sounds the same in your world feels like a theme park where all the animatronics were programmed by the same guy. Break the mold. Let your people sound like they actually live in the places you've built for them. If you've made it this far, thanks for listening. Let me know your favorite pet peeves in the comments, or just drop me a pirate emoji for the sake of the algorithm. And while you're down there, remember to hit the thumbs up or the hype button or both if you're feeling generous. If you're looking for more content from me, check out my video on the 5 mistakes people make with non-human species. And I'll see you soon for another episode of Just in Time World Building. Now go build something that doesn't suck.